Hello, welcome to the 11 Plus Hub Maths Paper 1 mock exam, our 10-minute test. Do make sure that you've had a go at the questions before watching this solutions video. The questions are in the video description, or you can get them directly on the 11plushub.com website. Okay, so let's take a look at the question. So question 1, calculate 28 multiplied by 0.6. So, a lot of students find it difficult to multiply decimals to whole numbers. We have a whole number, 28, and we have our decimal value here, which is 0.6. So, one good way of looking at a question like this and approaching a question like this is by changing our decimal value into a whole number. How do we do that? Well, 0.6 at the moment, of course, includes a decimal value. Now, if we move the decimal point one place to the right, or in other words, multiply it by 10, it becomes 6. Okay, so I'm going to answer the question as if the question is 28 multiplied by 6, because that makes things a little bit easier. Now I can answer the question using the column method, just like this. Okay. So we've got 28 multiplied by 6, 6 multiplied by 8, so our ones we're dealing with first, 6 multiplied by 8 gives us 48, so of course the second digit goes underneath, and the first digit, the 4, gets carried over to the tens column, and then 6 multiplied by 2 is 12, add the 4 that we carried over is 16, and we have the answer 168. Now, we made one of our values 10 times larger, okay? We moved the decimal point one place to the right. So we're going to get that decimal point and move it back in. So here's our decimal point. Let's move it back into our answer. It belongs there. And we have the answer 16.8. So the answer to this question is B. Let's move on to question 2. Question 2 says, out of 520 students, 3/5 are wearing trainers. How many students are wearing trainers? So this is a question in which we need to find a fraction of an amount. We need to find 3/5, let's underline that, 3/5 of 520. We know that we need to find 3/5 of 520 because 520 is our quantity. It's our whole amount, and 3/5 represents the number of students wearing trainers. And that's what we're being asked to find. How many students are wearing trainers? Okay, so the question can be rewritten more simply like this: 3/5 of 520. Now, when we need to find a fraction of an amount, we use the method quantity. Let's write this down: quantity divided by denominator multiplied by numerator. A bit messy, let me sort that out for you. Okay, I'm also going to replace this with the division symbols. Easier for me to do it this way, I do apologise. Okay, so this is the method we're going to use: quantity divided by denominator multiplied by numerator. This is how we find fractions of amounts. So we're going to get our quantity to begin with and divide it by our denominator. Now, our quantity is the whole amount that we're finding a fraction of. So 520 in this case. So we're going to do 520 and we're going to divide it by the denominator. And of course, the denominator is the bottom value in a fraction. So we're going to do 520 divided by 5. So let's deal with that first. So how many times does 5 go into 5? It goes once. How many times does 5 go into 2? Well, 5 doesn't go into 2, does it? It goes in 0 times. But I can't ignore that 2. All that means is I need to move the 2 along in front of the next digit. So it becomes 20, doesn't it? And then how many times does 5 go into 20? It goes 4 times. So quantity divided by denominator, we've done this bit, quantity divided by denominator, and we've got the answer 104. But I now need to get 104 and multiply it by the numerator, which is 3, the top number of the fraction. So we need to finish this question off, or finish this answer off, by doing 104 multiplied by 3. So let's use the column method. 104 multiplied by 3. So 3 multiplied by 4 gives me 12. Carry the 1 over. 3 multiplied by 0 gives me 0. Add the 1 that I carried over. And then 3 multiplied by 1 gives me 3. So my answer, 312, option C. Okay, let's take a look at question 3. Calculate 864 divided by 27. Okay, so now we are dividing by a 2-digit number. So this is going to require long division. So let's set this out. So I'm going to draw my bus stop. Always a good method for division. Okay, so I'm dividing 864, so that goes underneath or inside the bus stop. 864. And that's being divided by 27, so that goes on the outside. Okay, so if you're quite unfamiliar with long division, it's absolutely fine, but do pay very close attention to how we solve this, because it can be a bit tricky. Now, we are working with 2 digits immediately, okay? Which means we're going to compare 27 to the first 2 digits, okay? We're going to see how many times 27 goes into 86. Now, a lot of students say things like, but I can't do my 27 times tables, which is a good point. It's a tricky times tables to do, but you're not expected to be able to do the 27 times table. Let's do some repeated addition, but let's do it very, very carefully, okay? So 27 plus 27, well, that gives me 54, doesn't it? And if I add another 27, I arrive at 81. And because I've landed on 81, and I'm trying to see how many times 27 goes into 86, I know that I cannot go any further, okay? So 27 multiplied by 3 must be 81. So 27 goes into 86 3 times, okay? Because 27 multiplied by 3 is 81. But we do have a remainder, don't we? We have a remainder of 5, but this is long division, so we're going to do something a little bit different with this question, okay? So watch closely. 27 multiplied by 3 gives me 81. Now, what I'm going to do with 81 is put it down here and turn this into a subtraction question using the column method within the bus stop method, okay? So 6 subtract 1 gives me 5. And 8 subtract 8, well, that gives me nothing. And my final step is to bring the next number down. So let's drag the 4 down. And now we have a new value at the bottom here, which is 54. And now I'm going to continue answering the question. But at the bottom is our new value, okay? So it's no longer 864. It is now 54. So how many times does 27 go into 54? 27 goes into 54 twice. We already worked that out up here, didn't we? So 27 times 2 is 54. There is no remainder. So we have our answer. The answer must be 32. Okay, let's take a look at question 4. 2 siblings share 360 stickers in the ratio of 2 to 1. How many does a sibling with the larger share get? Okay, so once again, we're going to be dealing with quantities and parts, okay? So we have 360 stickers in total. That's clearly important to the question. So let's put that right here, okay? Now with ratio, a great method, a great way of solving ratio is to do this. First thing we're going to do is add together our ratio amounts. So we've got a part of 2 and a part of 1. We're going to add them together. Okay, so 2 plus 1, which is 3. Then what I'm going to do is get my quantity, which is 360, and divide it by 3. So let me say that one more time. I've added together the two parts of the ratio, so 2 plus 1, which is 3. I'm then going to divide my quantity, so 360, by 3. So what's 360 divided by 3? Well, we can use the bus stop method if we can't do that in our heads. So 360 divided by 3. 3 goes into 3 the one time, 3 goes into 6 twice, and 3 goes into 0, or it doesn't go into 0 at all, it goes in 0 times. Okay, and we get the answer 120. Now, once we've arrived at this answer, 120, we're simply going to multiply that by the parts in the ratio amounts. Okay, so 120 multiplied by 2 and 120 multiplied by 1. So 120 multiplied by 2 gives me 240, and 120 multiplied by 1, well, of course, that's going to stay at 120. So those are the two different amounts when they're split using the ratio 2 to 1. How many does the sibling with the larger share get? Well, one gets 240 stickers, the other gets 120 stickers. So 240 is the larger share, and therefore the answer is C. Okay, moving on to question 5. A square garden has sides of 40 meters. What is its area? Okay, so let's use this as a representation of the garden. I'll try to make it as even as possible so it looks just like a square. Okay, so this square that I've just drawn on the screen is going to represent the garden. It has sides of 40 meters. Because it's a square, it means all of its sides are the same. So all sides are 40 meters. So 40 meters all over for that one, but also all of the other sides are going to be 40 meters as well. What is its area? Now, to find the area of any rectangle, and remember a square is a special type of rectangle, what we need to do is get one side, the length, and multiply it by the other side, the width. Now this is a square, so all of the sides are the same. So really all we need to do is multiply one side by the other side, okay, or any other side. Okay, because all of the sides have the same value. So the question turns into 40 meters multiplied by 40 meters. Okay, so 40 meters multiplied by 40 meters. Now, there are many ways that we can solve this question. We could use the column method, but another way of looking at a question like this is similar to what we did earlier. Let's make this 40 meters 10 times smaller. Okay, let's divide 40 meters by 10. It would turn into 4, wouldn't it? It would be 40 meters multiplied by 4 meters, which I think you would agree is much easier. 40 times 4 is much easier than 40 multiplied by 40. So 40 multiplied by 4, let's write that down. So 40 meters multiplied by 4 meters. Let's forget the meters for a second. Let's look at those numbers. 40 times 4, that's going to give me 160. But I made one of my values 10 times smaller. So let's make our answer 10 times bigger by sticking that 0 back on. Okay. Now, we're not quite finished, because although we've multiplied 40 and 40, we haven't yet multiplied meters and meters, which sounds a bit bizarre. But think about it. If we're multiplying a meter by a meter, well, we've got 2 lots of meters, so meter squared. And that's important, because if you look at the answers, our answer does require that to be expressed. Okay, so the answer is 1,600 square meters, or meters squared. So that's our answer, option A. Okay, let's take a look at the next question, which is, what is the perimeter of the garden? So this is a follow-on from the last question. So let's just quickly bring that garden back up. And we'll remember that all sides were 40 meters. So we're not going to write them all out. We know that every side is 40 meters. Now, what does perimeter mean? Perimeter is the value of the sides of the garden when all added together. So we're adding all of the sides up. Okay, so we've got 1, 2, 3, 4 sides, of course, because it's a square. We're just going to add 40 meters to 40 meters to 40 meters to 40 meters, or we're going to multiply 40 by 4. And the answer we're going to get is 160 meters. Okay, moving on to question 7. Okay, this is a bit wordy, so let's be very careful with how we read this. Okay, a bus stop at station A. Sorry, a bus stops at station A with 45 people on board. 3 couples get off, and 2 families, each with 4 members, get on the bus. At the next station, station B, 10 people get off, and only 1 person gets on. The bus then pulls away to leave station B. How many people are on board the bus when the bus drives off from station B? Okay, so the tricky thing about this question isn't so much the numbers. We're not dealing with huge numbers, are we? It's the words, it's how wordy it is. There's a lot going on, so we've just got to be very, very careful with a question like this. So let's take it one step at a time. So a bus stops at station A with 45 people on board. So station A, when the bus stops at station A, there are 45 people on board. Now, once we've read the question, we understand the context, and we know that we're looking for how many people are on the bus at the end of the question when the bus drives away. Now, at the moment, we've got 45 people on the bus when the bus stops at station A. Okay. Now, when the bus does stop at station A, 3 couples get off, and 2 families, each with 4 members, get on the bus. Okay, so let's deal with that part now. There are currently 45 people on the bus at station A, but 3 couples get off, and 2 families with 4 members get on. So let's take those couples off first. So 3 couples get off. Now, what is a couple? Of course, it's 2 people. Couple means 2 people. So 3 lots of couples would be 6 people. So 6 people are going to get off. So 45 subtract 6 gives me 39. But 2 families, 2 lots of 4, get on. So 2 multiplied by 4 is 8. So we need to immediately add 8 to this value. 39 plus 8 gives me 47. Okay, now we've moved on to station B, and we currently have 47 people on the bus. Okay, but there is some activity, isn't there, at the next station? 10 people get off, so there were 47 on the bus, but now we need to subtract 10 because 10 people get off. So 47 subtract 10. Well, this has all happened at station B. So now we've got 37 once those 10 people get off the bus, and only 1 gets on. So I need to add 1 to our total amount, and that gives me 38. The bus then pulls away to leave station B. How many people are on board the bus when the bus drives off from station B? We've worked out the answer. The answer is 38. And let me just remind you of the point I made a minute ago, which is that it isn't the numbers that's tricky about this question. I'm sure you agree. 45 subtract 6, 39 plus 8, 37 plus 1. These aren't difficult questions to answer. The difficulty with a question like this is making sure we read it very, very carefully, making sure we don't miss any information. Okay? All right, let's move on to number 8. Liam's suitcase is 2.4 kilograms and Ava's is 1.85 kilograms. How much heavier is Liam's suitcase? Right, so when we have questions like this, take note of the options. They are all written in grams, which might cause us a bit of an issue because the question presents the suitcases in measures of kilograms. Okay, so the best way to solve a question like this is to convert the question, to convert the measurements within the question. Okay, so we're going to change 2.4 kilograms into grams and 1.85 kilograms into grams. So let's start off with Liam's suitcase, which is 2.4 kilograms. Okay, so Liam currently, well, he has a suitcase which is 2.4 kilograms, but we're going to change it into grams. Now, there are 1,000 grams in a kilogram. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to multiply 2.4 by 1,000. So let's do that. Let's write 2.4 over here. We're going to multiply this by 1,000, and that's going to tell us what the kilograms, or how much the suitcase weighs in grams, rather. Okay, so I'm going to multiply this by 1,000. How do I multiply 2.4 by 1,000? Well, I can get my decimal point and move it 3 places to the right. When we multiply by 10, we move it once to the right. When we multiply by 100, we can move it twice to the right. And when we multiply it by 1,000, we move it 3 times to the right. Okay, so because we're multiplying by 1,000, we're going to move that decimal point 3 places to the right. So here's my decimal point. Let's get rid of it and move it not in this place. That's only 1 place to the right. Not in this place. That's 2 places to the right. We're going to move it here. This is 3 places to the right. So there's our decimal point. But we've got 2 spaces, haven't we? We've got 2 spaces which are free, which have nothing in them. And we can't have that. We can't have nothing there. Okay? So because there is no value there, we must express that with placeholders, zeros. Okay? So I'm going to put 0 here and a 0 there. And I've now rewritten the kilograms as grams. On the screen, it says 2,400, and that represents Liam's suitcase in grams. So 2,400 grams. Okay, let's now do the same for Ava's suitcase. So I'm going to write Ava down here and do exactly the same thing again. So we've got 1.85, so 1.85. I need to move the decimal point 3 places to the right so that it's written in grams. Okay, so let's remove it from here. Now this is 1 place to the right. We don't want it there. This would be 2 places to the right. We don't want it here. And this would be 3 places to the right. This is where we want it. Okay. Now we've only got the 1 place to deal with here. So I'm going to put my 0 in. And it becomes 1,850 grams. So let's write that over here. 1,850 grams. Okay, now these 2 figures here, these 2 values are much easier to deal with, aren't they? To find the difference between them, or to find how much heavier Liam's suitcase is than Ava's, I just need to subtract Ava's measurement, or the suitcase of Ava's measurement, 1,850 grams, from 2,400 grams, and I'm going to get the answer 550 grams. Okay, moving on to question 9, the penultimate question. Ella has £15 and buys 5 notebooks, getting £2 change. What is the cost per notebook? Right, now how are we going to work this out? Well, if Ella has £15, she buys the notebooks and she gets £2 back. That tells us that the notebooks altogether cost £13. Okay, because she had £15, she buys 5 notebooks. Let's underline this. £15, she buys 5 notebooks and she gets £2 change. Okay, that must mean that the notebooks cost £13. Okay, because she gave 15 and she got £2 back, and 15 subtract 2 equals £13. Okay, so this is the money she had. Subtract the change you received. That means the £13 difference is how much she spent on the notebooks. Okay, that is clearly going to be important to the question. So let's bring the 13 over here. What do we need to do with this 13? Well, 5 notebooks cost £13. So if I get my £13 and divide it by 5, it's going to tell me the cost of one notebook. Okay, so how do I do this? Well, how many times does 5 go into 1? 5 doesn't go into 1. 5 goes into 1 0 times. But like the previous question, or the earlier question, sorry, we can't just ignore that number 1. It does need to be divided. Okay, so in this case, we move it over to the next digit. So it becomes 13. How many times does 5 go into 13? It goes twice, doesn't it? 5 times 2 is 10. We wanted to get to 13, so I have a remainder. Okay, now because I've got no value left, because I'm out of numbers, okay, there's nothing here, is there? There's nothing here to work with, but I do have a remainder of 3. Now, when we have a remainder, what we can do is place a decimal point at the top and a decimal point at the bottom, just to show that we're dealing with remainders, and we can put our remainders at the bottom to be divided. But if we do place our remainders at the bottom like this, so we have a remainder of 3, I've placed it at the bottom, what I now need to do is follow that with a 0. Okay. How many times does 5 go into 30? Well, 5 times 6 is 30. 5 times 6 is 30. Okay? And we don't have a remainder. So 13 divided by 5 is 2.6. And 2.6 in money speak is £2.60. Yeah, we've got £2 and 6 tens, and we've got nothing here. Okay, so let's express it. We've got no value in this ones column, if you like, or this pennies column. Okay, so the answer is going to be £2.60. So the answer is B. Okay, moving on to the final question. A cube has a side length of 4 centimeters. What is its volume? Okay, so what do we know about a cube? Well, we know that a cube has 6 faces, 6 square faces, which means all of its sides, all of its length, its height, and its width are all the same, okay? So it's a bit tricky to draw a cube, but if we imagine that this is one face of a cube and it's a square face, as that's what a cube is, it has 6 square faces. If a side length is 4 centimeters, we know that its height, in other words, this arrow on the screen, this side here, is also going to be 4 centimeters, okay? And its width is also going to be 4 centimeters, okay? Now let me just try to make this as cube-like as possible so it's clearer. I do apologize, this isn't going to be perfect, but you will get the idea. If I try my best to make that quite level. All right, now because this cube consists of nothing but square faces, it's going to have those 3 measurements, the length, the width, and the height of 4 centimeters. It's not perfect, but I think you can see what I mean, okay? So the measurement in this direction is going to be 4 centimeters. So 4 centimeters. The measurement here, the length, is going to be 4 centimeters, and its height is going to be 4 centimeters. All right. Now, when we need to work out the volume of a cube, all we do is multiply the length, which we know is 4 centimeters, and the width, which we know is 4 centimeters, and the height, which we know is 4 centimeters. So we're going to multiply them all together, okay? So 4 multiplied by 4 multiplied by 4, that gives us 64. And centimetre multiplied by centimetre multiplied by centimetre, well, that's going to be 3 lots of centimetres, so centimetre cubed. Okay, so cm with that little floating 3 hovering above to show it's cubed, okay? So the answer is C.